Hey, I've got some horrifying stories from Reddit for you. Strange, unsettling ones that might stick with you longer than you think. If you're into that kind of thing, consider subscribing. Let's get into it. The man in the photo album isn't related to us, but he's in every picture. When I was a kid, my mom kept a heavy leather photo album on the coffee table. Thick black pages, plastic sleeves, Polaroids tucked between brittle corners. I used to flip through it when she was cooking, or when I was supposed to be doing homework. Back then, I thought of it as proof that our family was normal. Birthdays, Christmas mornings, summer trips to the lake. Mundane and ordinary, but comforting. I didn't notice him at first. Why would I? When you're 7 years old, you don't scan every photo like a detective. You look for your face, your siblings, the dog. But years later, when I was visiting home after college, I picked the book up again. Nostalgia, I guess. That's when I saw him. He's in every photo, not in a way that jumps out immediately. Sometimes he's in the background, leaning against a tree. Other times he's at the edge of the frame, blurred by motion. Once he's sitting 2 rows back at my 5th birthday party, in the McDonald's Play Place seating area, staring directly into the camera. The strange thing is, I didn't know him. My parents didn't know him. Nobody in the family knew him. I asked my mom, laughing at first, flipping the album around to show her. Who's this guy? He's everywhere. Look, he's behind Aunt Claire in the Christmas photo, then again at the lake, and here at the carnival. She took the book from me. Her fingers froze on the page. That's just some stranger, she said finally, snapping the cover shut. You know how people wander into pictures. He's probably just a coincidence. But her tone wasn't casual. She put the album back on the shelf and didn't let me look at it again that night. I couldn't stop thinking about it, though. I lay in my childhood bedroom, staring at the ceiling, trying to reconstruct the photos in my head. He wasn't family. He wasn't a friend. He didn't even seem to age. His hair was always the same length, the same style. His clothes never really changed. The more I thought about it, the more I realized he wasn't just in the background. He was looking, always at the camera, always at us. And now I can't shake the thought. If he's in every picture, then he was there. At every moment, every holiday, every trip, every birthday, standing close enough to be caught on film, which means he was always near us. The next morning, I brought it up again. Over coffee, I said, "Mom, seriously, who was that guy in the photos? You knew everyone else at those parties. The neighbors, family, friends. Why didn't anyone ever mention him?" She didn't look at me. She stirred her cup with a slow, deliberate rhythm, like she was buying herself time. Finally, she said, "You're overthinking it. It's just someone passing through. People photobomb all the time." But her voice cracked when she said photobomb. I knew better than to push. My mom has that way of shutting a conversation down, pressing her lips together so tight, you can hear the finality in it. Still, when she left for work, I went back to the bookshelf. I pulled out the album. I sat cross-legged on the floor, turning pages carefully, like the paper might disintegrate in my hands. There he was, always there. Christmas '94, behind the tree. only half his face visible in the branches. Family reunion 97, across the picnic field, sitting alone on a bench. My high school graduation, dead center in the bleachers. Eyes locked on the camera. It wasn't just that he was in the photos. It was that he didn't change. The same dark jacket, the same haircut, the same posture. Straight-backed, hands clasped loosely in front. My uncle had gone from a full head of hair to bald. My cousins had grown taller, acne giving way to clearer skin. Even the dog had aged. But not him. I tried to be logical. Maybe it was some old family friend. Someone I just didn't remember. Maybe Mom was embarrassed, or there had been a falling out. That would explain the secrecy, the tone in her voice. But it didn't explain the lack of aging. I decided to test it. I pulled one of the Polaroids from its sleeve. My 7th birthday. I took a magnifying glass from the drawer and studied the man in the background. The resolution was grainy, colors faded, but his expression was clear, neutral, almost pleasant. His eyes, though his eyes seemed too sharp for the cheap film. I compared it to the photo from my high school graduation. Same eyes, same expression. The only thing that changed was how much closer he was. At the birthday, he was near the back wall of the place. At graduation, he was right there in the middle of the crowd. Closer. That word stuck in my head all night. When I called my dad about it, hoping he'd laugh and give me some old forgotten story, he got quiet instead. Then he asked me to stop asking questions. His exact words were, "Don't dig into it. Let it go for your own good." That's when I knew it wasn't a coincidence. And that's when I decided I had to know. So I scanned the photos, every single one that had him in it. Then I uploaded them to a facial recognition site, one of those free trial tools. I sat there chewing my nails, watching the little spinning wheel as the site combed through public databases. When the results came back, it wasn't a name. It wasn't anything at all. Just an error message. Face not recognized. No matches found. I tried again with another site. Same result. And another. Same thing. It was like he didn't exist. But he does. Because when I closed my laptop, my reflection in the dark screen wasn't alone. For half a second, just over my shoulder, I swear I saw him standing there. After that incident, I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the house felt amplified. Every shadow stretched too long. I ended up dragging the photo album upstairs to my old bedroom, setting it on the desk like it was some kind of evidence file. I told myself I was going to prove he wasn't what I thought, that there had to be some explanation. But the photos didn't stay the same. The first time I noticed, it was subtle. A snapshot from our trip to Niagara Falls. My dad holding me on his shoulders, water spraying in the background. I remembered that photo clearly because Dad had a goofy plastic poncho on. But now the man was standing behind us. He wasn't in the original. I know he was. He was closer than he'd ever been before. His face angled just enough that both of his eyes were visible. And this time he was smiling. Not a friendly smile, more like someone holding back a secret. I flipped to another photo, my 8th grade science fair. The man had been in the back row before, blurry between parents. Now his head tilted just slightly toward me, his mouth open like he'd just spoken. I felt sick. My palms started sweating, pages sticking as I turned faster and faster. Every picture had shifted, not in obvious ways, nothing dramatic, nothing that would scream altered. Just little things. A glance, a lean. The man's body turned ever so slightly toward me, like he was aware I was looking at him. I shut the book and shoved it under my bed, but that didn't help because the images were burned into my brain. I kept thinking about his eyes, sharp, too sharp, the way they seemed to cut through the blur of cheap cameras. That night, I dreamed I was flipping through the album again, but instead of birthdays or vacations, every page was a photo of me, right there in my room, taken from just outside the window. In every one, the man was closer, 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 until the last photo was nothing but his face. I woke up gasping, heart thudding like it wanted out of my chest. The album was back on my desk. I know I shoved it under the bed. I remember the scrape of cardboard against carpet. But there it was, sitting upright, open to the graduation photo. And this time, the man wasn't in the crowd. He was standing on stage, next to me. After that, I stopped pretending this was nostalgia. Something was wrong, deeply, horribly wrong. I didn't tell my mom. I didn't tell anyone. What could I even say? Hey, remember that stranger in every childhood memory we have? Well, he's moving closer now. Yeah, that'd go over well. Instead, I tried to ignore it. I shoved the album into the closet and stacked board games on top of it. Out of sight, out of mind. Except it was. The man started showing up outside the photos. It began with the bathroom mirror. I just finished brushing my teeth when I saw him standing at the very edge of the reflection, where the doorway met the hall. I spun around so fast, I nearly dropped the toothbrush. Nobody was there. The hallway was empty. When I looked back, so was the mirror. The next time, it was worse. I was in the kitchen, late at night, drinking water. The window above the sink looked out into the backyard. Dark, empty, nothing but trees. Except not empty. A figure was standing at the tree line, perfectly still. I didn't need the details to know it was him. The posture was the same, straight-backed, hands folded, waiting. I backed away, heart hammering, telling myself it was just a trick of the dark, some shadow. But when I blinked, his head tilted, slow, deliberate, like he knew I was watching. I yanked the curtains shut and didn't open them again. From then on, reflections betrayed me. Every dark screen, every pane of glass. I'd see him behind me, just far enough that I couldn't make out all the details. But I felt him, the weight of his gaze pressed down like a hand on my shoulder. I started covering mirrors. I unplugged the TV. I left the laptop lid closed. Still, I couldn't escape him, because he wasn't just showing up in the house anymore. He was interacting with the album. One night, I heard rustling from the closet, soft like pages turning. I froze in bed, every muscle locked. The sound went on for a minute, then stopped. When I finally forced myself to look, the closet door was cracked open. The board games, I'd stacked on top of the album were scattered across the floor, and the album itself was lying open, pages fluttering, as if from a breeze. I crept closer, every instinct screaming to stop. It had landed on a page I didn't recognize. Not a childhood memory, not a holiday. It was a photo I'd never seen before. Me sitting in my bed, now, and in the bottom corner of the frame, half in shadow, the man was standing inside my room. I couldn't take it anymore. The album, the photos changing, the man pressing into my house, none of it made sense. There had to be an explanation, some missing piece. So I confronted my mom. She was in the living room, folding laundry, when I dropped the album on the coffee table. The thud made her flinch. She looked at it like I'd just set down a dead animal. "Tell me who he is," I demanded. My voice shook, but I didn't care. "The man, he's in every picture. And don't tell me it's coincidence, because he's in ones that didn't even exist before." Her hands tightened on a towel until her knuckles went white. She didn't answer. "Mom," I pressed, "please, just tell me the truth." Finally, she set the towel down and sank onto the couch. For the first time in my life, she looked old, tired, like she'd been holding something in for decades, and it had finally rotted her from the inside. "I hoped you wouldn't notice," she whispered. "We all hoped." My skin went cold. "We." She nodded slowly. "Your grandmother, your uncle, your father, and me. We never talk about him. That's the rule. You don't say his name. You don't point him out. You don't acknowledge him. Because if you do, he notices you back." Her eyes glistened. She looked at me the way someone looks at a terminal patient, grief already there. "Why is he in our pictures?" I asked. Mom shook her head. "He's always been in our family, always. As far back as the albums go, every generation he's there. Weddings, funerals, baptisms. Sometimes he's just a blur. Sometimes he's closer." She covered her mouth, like she regretted saying that much. I leaned forward. "What does he want?" Her hand dropped into her lap. She didn't answer. "Mom," my voice cracked. "What does he want?" She whispered it so faintly, I almost didn't hear. "He chooses." I felt sick. Chooses what? Her eyes darted to the album. Who stays? Who doesn't? My stomach turned. Suddenly, pieces clicked together that I'd never questioned before. My cousin Danny, who disappeared when I was 10. The way relatives never talked about him. The empty chair at holidays nobody mentioned. I remembered once, when I was little, asking about him. My grandma had snapped, "We don't talk about Danny." I thought it was grief, but now I wondered if it was fear. Because when I flipped to the family reunion photo, the one where we'd all gathered at the park, I noticed something I hadn't before. Danny was in that photo, smiling, holding a frisbee. But in the copy I held now, he was. The man was standing in his place. I couldn't breathe. Danny wasn't in the photo anymore. Just gone, erased, like he'd never existed. And the man, standing where he'd been, looked sharper than ever, clearer than anyone else in the picture. I slammed the album shut and backed away. "Mom, we can't just ignore this. He's here, he's here." She wouldn't look at me. "The more you fight, the faster it happens. You've already seen too much." "What happens?" Her eyes filled with tears. She shook her head. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart." That's when I heard it. A click, the unmistakable sound of a camera shutter faint, coming from somewhere inside the house. I froze. Did you hear that? Mom's face crumpled. He's already chosen. I spun toward the sound. The hallway was empty, shadows stretching long. My pulse roared in my ears as I crept toward my bedroom. The album was waiting for me on the desk, open, pages fluttering, though there was no breeze. Another click. I looked down. There on the fresh page was a new Polaroid. Still developing, the chemical haze fading into an image, me. Standing in the hallway, right now. Behind me in the photo, the man was closer than ever. Not blurred, not distant. His hand was outstretched, almost touching my shoulder. Click. Another Polaroid slid onto the page by itself. This one showed me staring at the photo I was holding, my own face pale, horrified. And behind me, no longer reaching, he was gripping my shoulder. I dropped the book and stumbled back, heart slamming against my ribs. The lights flickered, and then the mirror across the room began to ripple. Not like glass breaking, like water. Like something was pressing through. A hand emerged first. Pale, thin, fingers too long. They pressed against. The glass then curled around the frame. I couldn't move. My legs locked as his face pushed forward, stretching the surface, until it tore open with a sound like wet fabric ripping. He stepped through. He was exactly as he appeared in every photo, dark jacket, neat hair, expression calm. Only now he was inches away. Why, I choked out. My voice sounded tiny, useless. He tilted his head, studying me with those sharp, unblinking eyes. And then slowly, deliberately, he raised the old camera hanging from his neck. Click. The flash blinded me. For a second, I saw nothing, just white. When my vision cleared, I wasn't in my room anymore. I was in the photo album. I could see my mom, standing over the book, crying. I could see my own face, frozen mid-scream, trapped behind the glossy surface. And behind me, already stepping into the frame, was the man. Closer, always getting closer. My neighbors say they've known my son for years. I've never had children. How old must he be now? 8, 9. I stared at my neighbor, unsure what she was asking. She read the confusion on my face. Your cute little guy. I saw him biking down the lane earlier. He must be old enough for grade 4 now, right? Mrs. Babbage was a bit on the older side, but I never thought she had shown signs of dementia. Not until now. I wasn't exactly sure what to say. She proceeded to stare at me, tilting her head, as if I was the one misremembering. I awkwardly opened my mouth. Oh, right, my little guy. She brightened. Yes, he must be in grade 4, right? Sure, I mean, yes, he is. What a cute little guy, she said, and returned to watering her flowers. It was an odd, slightly sad moment. I wondered if her husband had seen glimmers of this too. I could only hope this was a momentary blip, and not a sign of anything Alzheimer's related. I took the rest of my groceries out of the car and entered home. It had been a long day of teaching, and I just wanted to sit back, unwind, and watch something light on TV. But as soon as I took off my first shoe, I smelled it, something burning on the stove. Something burning with lots of cheese on it. The hell! I dashed over to the kitchen and almost fell down, partially because I was wearing only one shoe, but also because there was a scrawny little boy frying Kraft dinner. I let out a half scream, but very quickly I composed myself into the same assertive adult who taught at a university. What, excuse me, who are you? What are you doing here? The boy's blonde, willow-like hair whipped around his face as he looked at me with equal surprise. Papa, what do you mean? I'm here, I'm here. He was a scared, confused child, and I couldn't quite place the bizarre inflection in his words. Do you want some KD, Papa? Have some, have some. Was that a Russian accent? It took me a second to realize he was wearing an oversized shirt that looked just like mine. Was he wearing my clothes? I held out my palms like I would at a lecture, my standard everyone settle down gesture, and cleared my throat. I'm sorry, I don't know who you are or what this is. The boy widened his eyes, still frightened by my intensity. He stirred the food with a wooden spoon. It's KD, Papa, your favorite. Chili cheese kind, don't you remember? His name was Dmitri, and he claimed to be my son. Apparently, at some point, there had been a mother, but he didn't remember much about her. He only remembered me. You've been Papa my whole life. My whole life, Papa. I tried having a sit-down conversation. In fact, I tried to have many sit-down conversations where I explained to Dmitri that would be impossible. But it always ended with him clutching me, crying, begging me to remember him. The confusion only got worse when my mother called. How is my grandson doing? She asked. I didn't know how to reply. The conversation grew awkward until I clarified everything. Mom, what are you talking about? I don't have a son. I've never had a son. My mother gasped. Then she laughed and scolded me, saying I shouldn't joke around like that, because of course I've always had a son. A smart little guy who will be celebrating 9 this weekend. I hung up. I stood petrified in my own kitchen, staring at this strange, expectant Slavic child. For the next 10 minutes, all I could do was ask where his parents were. He just continued to act frightened, like any authentic kid might, and replied with the same question. How did you forget me, Papa? My method wasn't getting me anywhere, so I decided to play along. I cleared my head with a shot of espresso. I told him my brain must have been scrambled from overworking, and I apologized for not remembering I was his father. He brightened immediately. It's okay, Papa, it's okay. He gave me a hug. You always work so hard. The tension dropped as Dmitri finished making the noodles and served himself some. I politely declined and watched him eat. And he watched me watch him eat. So you're okay now? You're not angry? His accent was so odd. No, I said, I'm not angry. I was just a little scrambled. His eyes shimmered, looking more expectant. So we can be normal now. A chill trickled down my neck. I didn't really know what to say, but for whatever reason, I did not want to say yes. Because this was not normal, far from it. He started playing with his food, quivering like a worried mouse seeking reassurance. Everything will be fine, I eventually said. No need to stress. Enjoy your noodles. To my shock and dismay, I discovered that Dmitri also had his own room. My home office had somehow been replaced by a barren, clay-walled chamber filled with linen curtains, old wooden toys, and a simple bed. The smell of bread and earth wafted throughout. I watched him play with his blocks and spinning tops for about half an hour before. He yawned and said he wanted to sleep. It was the strangest thing, tucking him in. He didn't want pajamas. He just hopped into his straw bed and asked me to hold his hand. Dimitri's fingers were cold, slightly clammy little things. It was bizarre, comforting him like my own son, but it appeared to work. He softened and lay still. He didn't ask for a lullaby or a story. He just wanted to hold my hand for a minute. "Thank you, Papa. I'm so glad you're here. So glad you can be my Papa. Good night." I inched my way out of the room and watched him through the crack of his door. At about 9:30, he gave small, childlike snores. He had fallen asleep. Cautiously, I called Pat, my coworker, with whom I shared close contact. She had the same reaction as my mother. "Harlan, of course you have a son. From your marriage to Svetlana." "My marriage to who?" "You met her in Moscow when you were touring Europe." It was true. I had guest lectured 15 years ago across the UK, Germany, and Russia. I was awarded a grant for it, but I only stayed in Moscow for 3 days. I never met anyone named Svetlana. "Don't be weird, Harlan, come on." Pat's conviction was disturbing. "You and Svetlana were together for many years." "We were how many?" "Look, I know the divorce was hard, but you shouldn't pretend your ex-wife doesn't exist." "I'm not pretending, I'm being serious. I don't remember her." "Then get some sleep." I sipped my second espresso of the night. "But I have slept, I'm fine." "Well then, I don't get what this joke is. Knock it off, it's creepy." "I'm not joking. I'll see you tomorrow for the birthday." "Birthday?" "Yes, your son's birthday. Jesus Christ." "Good night, Harlan, get some sleep." I didn't sleep that night. My efforts were spent scouring the filing cabinets and drawers throughout my house. I had credit card bills covering school supplies, kids' clothing shops, and costlier groceries. I even had pictures of Dimitri hung around the walls from various ages. It's like everything was conforming to this new reality. The harder I looked for clues to disprove my fatherhood, the more evidence I found confirming it. It was Dimitri who woke me up off the couch and said Uncle Boris was here. Uncle Boris. I peeked through the window and saw a very large blonde man smiling back at me. Behind him was a gaggle of other relatives, all speaking Russian. "Hello, Harlan," the blonde man's voice boomed through the glass. "We are here for birthday." They all looked excited and motioned to the front door. They were wearing tunics and leggings, traditional birthday clothes or something. I was completely floored. I didn't know what to do. So I just nodded and subtly slinked back into the kitchen. Dimitri came to pull at my arm. "Come on, Papa, we have to let them in." "I don't know any of them." "Yes, you do, Papa. It's Uncle Boris. It's Uncle Boris." I yanked my hand away. It was one thing to pretend I was this kid's dad for a night. It was another to let a group of strangers into my house. Dimitri frowned. "I'll open the door." "Wait, hold on." I grabbed his shoulder. He turned away, let go. I tried to pull him back, but he dragged me into the living room again. Our struggle was on display for everyone outside. Boris looked at me with saucer eyes. Dmitri pulled harder. I had no choice but to pull harder back. The boy hit his head on the table as he fell. Boris yelled something in Russian. Someone else hollered back. I heard hands trying to wrench open my door. "Dmitri, stop," I said. "Let's just take a minute too." "You're hurting me, Papa. Oi." My front door unlocked. Footsteps barreled inside. I let go of my son and watched 3 large Slavic men enter my house with stern expressions. Dmitri hid behind them. "Is everything okay?" Boris peered down at me through his tangle of blonde hair. "Yes, sorry," I said, struggling to find words. "I'm just very confused." "Confused? Why were you hitting Dmitri?" The boy pulled on his uncle's arm and whispered something. Boris' face darkened. Then a slender pair of arms pushed past the men, revealing a woman with bloodshot eyes. Something in me knew it was her. Svetlana. She wore a draped brown sheet as a dress, her skin so pale I could see her sinews and bones. It's like she had some extreme form of albinism. "Harlan," she said, somehow breaking my name into 3 syllables. Har-Elan. I've never been so instinctively afraid of a person in my life. It's like she had weaved herself out of the darkest edges of memory. I saw flashes of her holding my waist in Moscow, outside Red Square. Flashes of her lips whispering chants in the shadows of St. Basil's Cathedral. Svetlana held Dmitri's shoulder, then looked up at me. "Just tell him it will be normal. Tell him everything will be normal. No, this is not happening. None of this is real." Barefoot, still wearing the same clothes as yesterday, I bolted out the back of my house and hurtled toward my driveway. Before the rest of my new family could react, I jumped into my Subaru and slammed the gas. As I drove away, I looked back in the rearview mirror, and I swear it didn't look like my house at all. I swear it looked like a thatched roof hut. Back at the university, I locked myself in my study. I canceled all speaking arrangements for the next week, saying I needed a few personal days. No one in my department knew I had a son. Nothing in my study indicated I had an extended Russian family. When I asked Pat about our phone conversation last night, her response was, "What conversation?" My mom said the same thing. With immense trepidation, I returned to my house the following day, and after stepping back inside, I knew that everything had reverted to the way it was before. No more framed pictures of Dmitri, no more alarming photo albums, and that clay-walled room where Dmitri spun tops and slept. It was just my home office again. To this day, I still have no clue what happened during that bizarre September weekend. But after some research, I'm starting to think I did encounter something in Moscow all those years ago. Some kind of lingering old curse, or a stray spirit, or a Chernia Vedma, a black witch disguised as an ordinary woman. Although I haven't seen any evil things bubble up around my place since. Every now and then, I do have a conversation with Mrs. Babbage. She seems to remember my son very well. Such a cute little guy, always waving hello. Did you know he offered me food once? I think it was Kraft dinner. I work in a 24/7 diner. Last night's customers weren't human. You know how it only takes a few small accidents to make you homeless. An emergency expense here. a couple of overdraft fees there, a rent check that bounced because of the fees, and an eviction notice that happened because of the bounce. I went from stable, albeit not wealthy, to sleeping in my car within 4 weeks, and I count myself lucky. At least I have a car and a job, which is why I have this story. I work the overnight shift at an all-night diner. Maybe you've heard of it, maybe you haven't. They never close. They're always hiring, and they don't really care about your background. It was the quiet hours when the time is so late, it's early. The diner was empty. I was leaning against the counter, eating a bowl of chili with shredded cheese and chopped onion, while I scrolled for other jobs on my phone. The cook was outside having a smoke. The only other person in the diner with me was a young, pregnant girl named Sherry. She was texting her grandmother nervously. "I'm gonna have to leave early. My grandma is telling me I need to come get my child. I hate when she does this, but I can't afford a babysitter either." Sherry was cool, but like everyone else here, she was having a rough time. Her boyfriend was in prison 60 miles down the road. Part of why she worked here was to fill his accounts and have enough money for regular visits. He was there for murder or something, but we don't really talk about our personal lives, so I wasn't sure. Brucius was the cook. He took a smoke break at every available opportunity, which, when the restaurant was empty, meant a lot of opportunity. He'd wander back if a customer walked in, but there was no reason to bother him. "Hey, it's not a problem. I'll handle everything. Go pick up your kid. Thank you, you're a lifesaver. I owe you. Don't worry about it. I'll see you Wednesday." She ran out the door, and I didn't think anything of it. I heard her say goodbye to Brucius, and then her car engine grind as she drove away. I had another 4 hours left on my shift. With any luck, it would stay this quiet. Of course, since I'm here talking to you, you know I wasn't so lucky. The door dinged, and a family of 4 walked in: mom, dad, boy, and girl. My eyes flicked to the parking lot. I didn't see a car, but I told myself they could have parked behind the building. It's funny, but I don't remember what they looked like. However, I do remember what they wore. It was some real Leave It to Beaver, Andy Griffith type of clothing. The dad had on a blue plaid button-up shirt with a white undershirt beneath and khaki trousers. His hair was perfectly slicked back, like one of those old Brylcreem ads. The mom wore a red gingham check dress with a wide skirt, crinoline, and cinched waist. Her hair, too, was impeccable, straight out of an old Betty Crocker commercial. The little girl had her hair in 2 pigtails, anointed with yellow bows. She was wearing a pink shirt and blue shorts. The boy had a perfect cowlick and wore a blue shirt with red shorts. I felt unsettled. They looked perfect, but they felt wrong. Brucius came back inside. He took one long look at the family as they settled into a booth. Then he went through the swinging doors into the back without a word. Rude. "Good evening, y'all," I said, as I set down the laminated menus. "Can I get you anything to drink?" Each member of the family clasped their hands over their menu and turned in my direction with a smile. "4 glasses of milk, please," said the dad. His tone was folksy, like something out of an old sitcom. "Everything looks so delicious," said the mom cheerily, without glancing at the menu. I couldn't remember the last time I'd seen adults order milk, especially at such a late hour. "Thank you," the dad said when I set their glasses down. No one had moved 1 centimeter. Their posture and faces were in the same position as they watched me pour their beverages and return. I wiped my hands on my apron and attempted a smile. "Are you all ready to order?" The 4 of them glanced towards my name tag in unison. I was suddenly glad most of it was hidden beneath my hoodie. "We're waiting for someone," said the mom in a sing-song voice. They all turned to face each other, small, identical smiles on their faces. Condensation from their untouched glasses formed 4 tiny puddles. It wasn't right for children to be that quiet, or for anyone to be that still. To be honest, it wasn't normal to wait for someone at that hour either. I pretended to wipe down the counters. Guests weren't supposed to be left alone, and I didn't know what to do. "Are you sure I can't bring you anything?" I asked after a couple distressingly silent minutes. "We told you we're waiting," one of the children hissed. I startled and dropped the rag. That wasn't a child's voice. All 4 sets of eyes again fixated on me. But this time, N01 was smiling. My heartbeat rushed in my ears. I could have sworn they heard it too. "Okay," I laughed nervously. My voice was a little too high. Abruptly, out the corner of my eye, I saw Brucius waving frantically behind the swinging doors. He gestured for me to join him in the back. Relieved to have an excuse to leave, I backed away slowly. Something deep in my most primal brain told me not to turn my back to them. Rules be damned. I couldn't be out there alone with them a second longer. I'd barely opened the swinging doors when he jerked me all the way in. "Listen," he whispered urgently. His grip was tight on my arm. "Those people out there aren't real people." I looked back through the small window in the swinging door. "I do." He interrupted me. "What I don't have is time to explain. You see that bag of salt?" He jerked his head towards a giant-sized bag of pure rock salt I'd somehow never seen since working here. "Pour a line at the front. Make sure it's far enough back that the swinging door won't break the line. It needs to go all the way from one wall to the other. Pour extra if you're not sure." "I'm confused. And I'm scared shitless. Pour." He hefted his own large bag of salt and began making a wide circle, one large enough to fit us both. Looking behind him, I could see there was already a similar salt line at the back, stretching from wall to wall. I had no idea what was happening, but I'd never seen Brucius be anything other than laid back and chill. That was enough to get me to listen. As I poured, I took a peek through the round window in the swinging doors. The family was still sitting there. They still hadn't moved. "This is really creepy," I muttered under my breath. Once my line of salt had been poured and double-checked, Brucius pointed to the inside of the circle and pressed a finger to his lips. Tiptoeing to the wall, he carefully opened the circuit box. Then, taking a deep breath, he switched off the breakers, plunging the entire restaurant into darkness and turning off the lights outside. In the next instant, he leapt to join me in the middle of the circle. One heartbeat later, I heard the most ungodly shrieking from the dining area. I clamped my hands over my ears, but it didn't help. It was like the sound waves were made of broken glass. My skin felt like it was being peeled off. My eardrums screamed. I started to fall over and stopped abruptly, only partway down. Brucius had twisted the collar of my shirt around his hand. I'd almost fallen outside the circle. Another shriek rolled over me, and I sobbed in confusion and pain. My muscles clenched into knots as I fought an instinctive urge to run. Brucious grip tightened, keeping me grounded. Just then, the swinging doors blasted open. A roiling, inky mass slithered and slopped its way inside. You'd think it would be too dark to see anything. But there were so many mouths, so many teeth, so many eyes. The space filled with the scent of rot and tar. This was the family. I retched and clamped my hands over my mouth to keep the vomit down. The mass glided and spilled its way up to the very edge of the salt line. It stretched horizontally along its entire length. I understood why there was a circle now. If there'd been the slightest gap in the line, or between the line and the wall, it would have slithered across. My eyes burned the longer I looked. I felt something warm drop onto my hand. I thought it was tears, but it was a nosebleed. As the screams ratcheted higher, Bruce shouted, "Close your eyes." I clamped my hands over my ears, screwed my eyes shut, and sobbed. Eventually, I don't know how long, the screaming stopped. I must have passed out right after. When I came to, it was dawn. Every muscle and bone in my body ached when I stood up. My face was crusted with dried tears, snot, and blood. Brucius was red-eyed and bedraggled. He was using the special broom, the one that said, "Do not use," in Sharpie on the handle, to sweep all the salt into a large dustpan with the same directive. The salt had turned a smoky blue and smelled like sulfur and gasoline. Perhaps it was the daylight. Perhaps it was surviving the single most terrifying night of my life. But when I spoke, my voice was surprisingly calm, even though it sounded like I'd chewed and swallowed broken glass. "I'm going to wash my face. Then I'm going to make us coffee. And then you're going to tell me what the hell that was." He nodded and mumbled, "Yeah," and kept sweeping. I was half tempted to turn the sign at the door to closed, but it would have been my luck if the manager appeared out of nowhere. Besides, the place was empty. Once he was done sweeping, he washed his hands and joined me. I poured him a mug of the best coffee I've ever tasted. He lit up a cigarette. We looked at each other across an empty table. Despite the commotion, the diner was in perfect order, like nothing had ever happened. "What was that?" He took a long drag, as though toying with telling me the truth or not. But after last night, it was too late to lie. They're called the family. I'd never seen them before. But Carrie, the waitress before you and Sherry, worked here for a few years. She said they show up every once in a while. He paused, as if expecting me to say something. I took a long sip, and he kept on. The first clue was they didn't have a car. They just appeared, I don't even know from where, and walked in. The second is how they were dressed. Where did they come from? I don't know. But the lore is a family disappeared on the highway decades ago. When they came back, they were that. And y'all didn't think to tell me this when I got hired. Would you have believed it? I guess not. There's a reason the pay is so good. What about the salt, the lights? Listen, I don't know all the rules, and she didn't either. But before this place was built, apparently there were a lot more disappearances. People would get off at this exit because they thought they saw a sign for food or gas. They would take a turn and never be seen again. But now people just stop here, right off the highway and right back on. But that means when the family gets hungry, They come here. Yeah, that's why you went straight to the back. Yeah, I needed to get started. And you turned off the lights, so no one stops while they're here. Yeah, what about the salt? He went quiet, you saw why. At that moment, the door opened. A couple with a toddler entered, a real family, oblivious. We stopped talking. I took their order and Brucius heated up the grill. There was nothing else to do. This happened a few weeks ago, but I'm still working there. Corporate gave us an extra bonus check when the incident was reported. It got me a cheap hotel with a decent bed and shower for a little while. I'm still applying for jobs, but no one else has called me back for an interview. I'm alive because of Brucius, but he was just hired as a corrections officer at the prison and is leaving soon. I might delete this later, but I needed to share it with someone, where no one would know who I was or judge me. What do you think I should do? If any of these stories got under your skin, let me know in the comments. And if you want more strange and unsettling stories, don't forget to subscribe. Until next time, stay curious and maybe keep a light on.